Okay, are we live? Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Labour, the Committee Chairman. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
We've had apologies from Councillor Morgan, Councillor Flynn, and Councillor Stead is substituting.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Nope. The minutes of the meeting 15th of November were in your pack. Can I take those as agreed? There's two items on tonight's agenda. They are both being taken in part one and there are no other items. A little bit of housekeeping. Some of you may be familiar with how this works, some of you may not be. We're not expecting any fire drills tonight, so if the fire alarm goes off, we will be evacuating the building, normally through that fire exit, and there is another one immediately behind me. And the quickest route out is generally straight through the double doors ahead of you and down the spiral staircase. Could I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least to silent? In terms of tonight's agenda, this is a meeting of the Planning Committee held in public, not a public meeting. Therefore, the rights to address the committee are as set out in the Council's Constitution, as set out in the committee papers, and I will summarise now. There are only two items on tonight's agenda. Both have petitions. The petitioners have a right to address this for 5 minutes each. Traffic lights will guide you. You get 4 minutes green, a minute amber, and you get to red. That's time up. Anybody speaking to us, members may ask questions in clarification. If you raise points that need officers to provide us a little more information, we won't take that out of your time. I'll take those and do them at the end. On any item where there is a petition, the applicant or their agent has a right to address us, as do ward councillors. There are no ward councillors in the room, and I'm not aware that any intend to join us. The officers, we have all obviously had the committee papers. There will be a presentation and slides in a moment which explains each scheme to us. And obviously then we will then hear what the petitioners have got to say. The voting members of committee tonight are Councillor Stead, Councillor Duku, Councillor Higgins and Councillor Graham on this side, and Councillor Oswald, Councillor Dillon and Councillor Cattering on that side. I only get a vote if they manage to get a tie, and as there's 7 of them, that's going to be difficult tonight. They're going to have some abstentions as well. So that keeps me out of it. The officer team tonight to provide the committee with advice. Alan Tilley is doing transport. Edward Obeng is doing the presenting. James Roger, the head of planning, will offer us advice. Luke Taylor from Democratic Services, my clerk, and Glenn Egan is providing us with legal advice if we require it. That's the formalities done. I'm going to move straight to item 6 on page 11, 60 Long Lane, Ickenham. Edward, would you explain this one to us?
Good evening, Chairman and members. Item 6 of your agenda is a proposal for a 2-storey detached building with habitable roof space to create 8 2-bedroom flats. It's a flatted development in essence, with associated amenity space, parking and installation of vehicle crossover. If I could take members through the slides. We have the location plan and the constraints plan, which clearly shows that the subject site is in the Ickenham Village Conservation Area. Another location plan. What you have is another site plan. The subject site is a short distance from the junction of Milton Road and Long Lane. The proposed ground floor plan and proposed first floor plan. Proposed second floor plan. And these are proposed elevations for the subject building. Further elevations showing you a street view. a bird's eye view of the subject site, and some photos showing you the existing building. As you know, the proposal involves demolition of this building. Further photos of the existing building. And this is the rear. And the last photo at the bottom, as you can see, is the rather overgrown swimming pool that was there. Members, in essence, apart from the fact that the applicant didn't submit a heritage assessment to justify the demolition of the subject building, the officer's recommendation is that the proposal be refused due to 5 reasons, which are set out in the committee report, and essentially they deal with issues to do with scale, bulk, height, and adverse impact to residential amenity of adjoining occupiers. Thank you, Chairman. Members.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it. I would also draw members' attention to the addendum, which gives a full explanation of the 10% rule in relation to this property, which is the rule that is applied by officers when considering whether a flatted development is acceptable in principle when it changes a road from houses to flats. So there's a very full explanation of that in the addendum. The key point, I think, is just towards the bottom where officers are confirming that in this location, using the measurements set out, only 5.33% of flatted developments, if permission was granted, which is well below the 10. So I think that probably covers that. Okay, we have a petition in objection. Mr. Sire, thank you. If you'd like to take a seat at the table, if you press the button on the middle, the microphone will light up. Just for the record, obviously this meeting is on the Council's YouTube site, and obviously now those who are about to join us at the table and speak are now featuring within that. Yes, please, yeah. A couple, want to carry on?
Yes, no. Okay. Good evening, Chairman, Councillors and members of the committee. My name is Gerda Siri of 58 Long Lane, and I'm speaking on behalf of the approximate 40 petitioners to object against the proposed plans that have been submitted for 60 Long Lane. To be specific, the objection to remove a family home for the development of a large block of flats in the Ickenham conservation area that would completely be out of character with the neighbourhood. Firstly, may I thank the planning officer for the recommended refusal of the plans, of which local residents are very pleased to hear. Our desired outcome is to retain the single dwelling property as a running family home. Also, note the fact that the proposed plans breach over 33 regulations per the planning officer report. We are very pleased with the summary of notes confirming all violations in detail. So I'll review 6 key themes across the report, just to summarise on behalf of the residents. The first point being the design and access statement provided by the developer. This is somewhat vague, and many members of the local area, including the Ickenham Residents Association, struggle to understand the sheer impact and size of the block of flats, given the fact that there was a lack of comparison drawings between what's now existing and what's proposed. So, per the images shown, this is not necessarily a 2-storey building, but more of a 3-storey brutal block of flats with both front and rear dormers. May I add that dormers are not necessarily a feature of Long Lane and the local area. My second point, being a conservation area, local family homes do enjoy lush greenery, both front and rear, with mature gardens, with property set within an aesthetically pleasing proportion to the size of the plot. This development of sheer scale will overshadow and consume neighbouring properties and result in a harmful detriment to the amenities of neighbouring homes. The current mock Tudor property occupies approximately 17% or so of the plot, with the proposed plans to occupy over 60%. Also, the footprint is to increase by 300%. That's not necessarily clear by the plans, but bringing that to the attention. This is a shocking huge increase of grabbing land in the conservation area. The new build does not make any contribution to the local area, nor does it harmonise with the conservation area, especially sitting in between two proud, handsome properties. In the local residents' opinion, this is overdevelopment of what is currently a single family plot. My third point being the fact that balconies exist to the rear of the proposed plans, which is going to be detriment to the neighbouring amenities, given the fact they will be overlooking to the rear and the sides of the properties. This is not necessarily the same as having windows, whereby by the nature of balconies, the potential residents will be occupying those balconies at quite significant time, and they're again not a feature of the conservation area, and this will impact all neighbouring properties to both sides and rear of the plot, particularly given the fact that the rear of the property will be encroaching on the 21 metres to the habitable space behind the property. The fourth point being, while it has been mentioned that 8 parking spaces are potentially sufficient, there are no preservations for disabled parking. It is also unclear whether the spaces are according to the sizing standards. And as you can see during peak hours,
The last page.
the street is very, very busy. Without a doubt, visitor and resident traffic generation will spill onto Long Lane, which will create, in a resident's opinion, a safety hazard and a traffic black spot, given the fact that the curvature in the road itself. Long Lane does have double yellow line restrictions, which will therefore increase traffic and put further stress on neighbouring side roads. The fifth point being the fact that the proposal changed from the single dwelling plot to 8 flats, which total 16 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms and 8 kitchens on this single plot, will significantly result in increase of noise and disturbance to the neighbouring homes. The local residents are very concerned with the increase in noise pollution and in turn the potential increase in stress caused by such noise. Also, the light pollution is another factor that local residents are extremely concerned with, especially given how number 66 further down the line really does stick out. My final key point, the proposed plans aim to remove up to 34% of the trees, highlighting risk to those with TPOs and increasing hard surface area, which is not in line with the conservation area, nor a promotion of nature conservation. The Herts and Middlesex Badger Group have been notified of these plans and the potential impact to the local nature. My final key points, whilst number 66 has been developed and stands, in our opinion, this should not set an unwarranted planning precedence to this property for any reason whatsoever. Furthermore, we suspect that this will probably not be the last time we sit here in front of you, and we do request your support as part of this process, as in our humble opinion we are sort of residents of the area and this impacts us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was just about timed. Do members have any questions? No. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
If you just turn that microphone off for me, that would be great. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? Nobody's sticking their hand up, right? No ward councillors. I'm going to open it for discussion. Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I think that this is most probably out of character and out of keeping with the current surroundings. We also have to take into consideration the 10%, and I think there are enough reasons for refusal, and they're all on page 12 and on the last page of the report. So with that, Chairman, I'll move the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. I'll see Councillor Higgins and Councillor Zuku.
I'll second.
Oh, right. Oh, okay, so I don't need you as well then. Okay. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. Unanimously refused. I move to 103 Shenley Avenue, item 7, page 29. Edward, will you explain the merits of this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Item 7, which is 103 Shenley Avenue, Ruislip, is a proposal effectively for 2 two-storey 4-bed semi-detached dwellings with associated parking and amenity space, plus the installation of 2 vehicle crossovers to the front of the proposal. And the proposal involves the demolition of the existing bungalow that's on the subject site. If I could take members through the slides. We have the location plan and the constraints plan. The subject site is not in a conservation area. another location plan, and we have a landscaping plan for the proposed scheme, existing ground floor plan, and the proposed floor plans and elevations for the scheme. Street elevation, plans showing the recently built extension at number 105 Shenley Avenue, an aerial view of the subject site, and some photographs showing you the subject bungalow, and this is a photo of 105. That's the rear of 105. In relation to the subject property. And further street views. Mr. Chairman, Officer's recommendation is that the scheme is policy compliant, and there are 9 reasons set out by officers for approval. So 9 conditions set out in the report for effectively guiding members to, if you are minded to grant consent for the scheme. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The head of planning, I think, is going to add a 10th condition before we might as well hear it before we hear this.
Thank you, Chairman. It's to add the obscure glazing condition to prevent any side windows, because there are some side non-habitable room windows, so that they are obscure glazed. I just wanted to also quickly clarify the key consideration here is whether the 45-degree line is met, because the 2 dwellings go slightly further to the rear than the neighbours, and officers are satisfied the 45-degree line is met in this case. The neighbour looking at this photo, the neighbour on the right-hand side, as you're facing the property that has the rear extension, their first floor window is quite large in size and width. And what that means is the midpoint is some distance from the boundary, and that midpoint is further away than the depth going beyond the neighbour's house to the rear. And it's for that reason the 45-degree line is met, and hence it's a policy compliant scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have an objection. Mr. Hill? You press the button on the middle as you start.
Okay. So, good evening. We, the petitioners, residents and the objectors are extremely disappointed, aggrieved and feel totally let down by the decision of the planning officer for a recommendation of approval for 103 Shenley Avenue. You've already seen photographs of 103 Shenley Avenue, so I won't show those again, but we feel that the planning officer has not taken consideration of all our concerns that we made. In particular, this proposed plan is an overdevelopment, overbearing, intrusive of the neighbouring properties. The redevelopment plan for the 2x4 semi-detached houses are not in character of any other dwellings in Shenley Avenue. All dwellings in Shenley Avenue are either bungalows, semi-detached and detached houses built as 2 and 3 bedroom houses, all with garages. Over some time, some of those garages have actually been converted into additional rooms, but this is in keeping with the character. Now, this is the second application that's been submitted and the application is actually the same as the first one. It's the same footprint, same layout, the same size as the first application that was submitted way back in 2016. The first application was actually withdrawn by the applicant within 24 hours before going to the planning committee. This was in January 2017. Refusal for the first application was recommended by the planning officer, mainly based on concerns of over-dominance and loss of outlook to neighbouring occupiers of 101 and 105 Shenley Avenue. And I'll read out some words in the officer's first draft report that was going to go to this committee in January 2017 for recommendal for refusal. And in the draft report, I'll hold this up, it's actually number 10, conclusion. And the officer says, whilst there is no objection to the principle of residential redevelopment of this site, it is considered that the development as proposed will result in a material loss of maintenance for the occupiers of adjoining dwellings by reason of overbearing impact and loss of outlook. These are not my words, these are the planning officers. And so really, you know, I need to point out again that this is the second application, it has the same dimensions as the first. And so why is the planning officer now satisfied that the second planning application is it's the same size, but it's an overdevelopment really, by no means of the word. Now, 4 years ago, there was an identical bungalow in Shenley Avenue, number 81. Now, this was demolished and redeveloped into two semi-detached houses. However, these are actually both 3 bedrooms and have single-storey extensions on the ground. This development was actually cut back to scale in response to a very large petition made. Now, the initial planned redevelopment was actually reduced in size to blend in with its neighbouring properties after taking into account of the concerns and comments made for refusal. I will show you a picture, but as time's moving on, the planned development of 103 Shenley Avenue does not in the slightest resemble other neighbouring properties in the road at all. It's really like a box, and it's an overdevelopment. In summary, we accept that the development can be a positive thing for the community, but only if it's managed in a way that takes into consideration of other properties and its residents. We feel the planning officer's decision on the second application contradicts with his conclusion for refusal against the first application on the grounds that I've just given. And we respectfully request the committee to put its residents first and refuse this planning application on the grounds that I've just given. If there's any questions, then please let me know.
Any questions, members? No? No?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. If you just turn the microphone off for me, it would be helpful. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? No, all missing again. Okay. Just by way of clarification for the head of planning, does it end it for us anyway? I would draw members' attention to page 34, 35 of the officer report. I would remind you, as I always do on these occasions, the report you have to consider is the one that is before you. The top of page 35 explains the clarifications that have come through since the February 17 report, and that why the report is now considered acceptable. The head of planning also offered some guidance before we started.
Yeah,
so you want to just amplify that for me?
Yeah, so there was a previous scheme that did have a different layout in terms of the parking at the front, so that was actually a change. But what's also happened since then is officers have clarified further the 45-degree line, and that is the crux of this. So if the 45-degree line was breached, we were recommending refusal. We think the depth of the extension beyond the neighbour's house is 3.4 metres, and the distance from in the other direction, as it were, to the midpoint is 3.5 metres. So as in effect to comply with the 45-degree line, you don't want it going deeper than the distance from the midpoint of the first floor habitable room window. So I'm not going to say it's not close, but we think the scheme is compliant with the 45-degree line. The other point I'd mention is with the 45-degree line, the HDAS guidance does refer to the depth as well. So in effect, if you had a scenario where there was 45-degree line complied with, but there was a 10-metre deep extension, then that could raise its own set of concerns. But in this case, because it's 3.4 metres, that issue doesn't arise in effect. It's not so deep that it starts to bring into doubt whether the 45-degree line is the correct approach. So, yes, officers are satisfied it's a policy compliant scheme. Clearly there would be some neighbour impact, but that impact is in line with what our guidance considers to be acceptable.
Thank you, Head of Planning, for that guidance. Can I open it up? Councillor Graham, please.
Yes, Chairman. Apparently the council hire engineer is now satisfied with the layout, whereas that wasn't the case before. What's changed?
Thank you, Chairman. A sufficient number of car parking spaces are now provided and are compliant with the council's car parking standards.
It's a very simple, straightforward answer. I don't know if we've got... Well, what we need to look at is the layout that is before you, of course, and the layout before us, I think it's a very simple, straightforward one, from my memory. There's nothing complicated about it. It's 2 parking spaces side by side. Which, yeah. So that's... There's nothing... No, it doesn't need any more explanation of that. Councillor Higgins, then Councillor Dushu, and then Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, unfortunately, I think our hands are going to be a little bit tied, to be honest. I do sympathise with residents on this. But I just want to make sure, just for clarity, it's on page 31, item 8. There is the removal of the PD rights, correct? PD. PD rights. Yeah.
PD rights have come off, yeah,
Yeah,
no additional
exactly.
windows, doors, no outbuildings.
So if anything was to occur, it'd have to come back.
It has to come back, yeah.
So on that note, with a heavy heart, I'm afraid I'm going to have to agree with the officer.
Right, let me just see if anybody else has got anything else they want to do. Councillor Dushu?
Well, I figure I might actually say something this time, but it is broadly agreeing. You know, if we look at the previous one, that was clearly monolithic. It was way over development. This is close, but it's on the right side of legal close, as it were. So again, heavy heart. I absolutely again take the point, but I move with officer's recommendations.
Councillor Dillon now has given up on that one. Okay, it seems not totally popular, but yeah, nothing else you can do with it. Someone give me a proposal. Are you going to propose officer's recommendations?
I did propose
yeah, and you're going to second. All those in favour of approval, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's approved. 6:28. We're done.